Ladies and gentlemen, streaming services have brought in tremendous impact on consumer behavior, audience footfall, movie viewing, and the consumption of quality content. But has the cinema exhibition industry been negatively impacted with the onslaught of streaming services, VOD, OTT, and mobile-driven premium content? Or how can the exhibition industry survive and thrive amidst this disrupted reality and get moviegoers flocking back to the theaters? I'm sure there's another question that is still on our minds if we are likely to see a decline in box office collections, food and beverages, and advertising revenues, both at single screens and multiplexes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to address all these questions and speak to us more on this topic, please join me in welcoming on stage industry leaders who will share the opportunities and obstacles with a detailed analysis on these trend-setting changes. May I please request on stage our panelists, Mr. Amit Praveen Sharma, Managing Director, Miraj Entertainment; Mr. John Schreiner, Senior Vice President, IMAX Corporation; Mr. Kamal Gyanchandani, CEO, PVRs Pictures; Mr. Kushal LC, CEO, Veeresh Cinemas, Bangalore. And may I request the moderator of this session, Mr. Karan Taurani, Vice President, Research Media, Elara Capital, to take his seat. Ladies and gentlemen, before they begin, can we please have a huge round of applause for our speakers on stage? Over to you, Mr. Taurani.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this big Cine Expo. And it's a very good topic right now to speak in the current context. After Jio has just scaled up massively in the mobile penetration. So I'm Karan Taurani. I'm from Elara Capital. I head the media entertainment research at Elara Capital. And just to give you a perspective in terms of some numbers in the market today, so you have 370 million video viewers in India today, which are growing at almost 30% every year. Almost 1/3 of these video viewers, consume entertainment genre content. So, just to discuss whether will this be a big risk, for the exhibitors. And mind you, this is more in terms of the youth. So almost 75% of these video viewers are basically in the age group of 18 to 30 years. So we have our esteemed panelists here, who can add more insights. I have multiple topics of discussions. So please mind me, if I ask you multiple questions and grill you on that. So I think first we'll just start with a quick round of introduction from each one of them. And then we can start with the various topics. So over to you.
Thank you. Myself, Kushal from Bangalore, Video Cinemas, and I do manage my own cinemas. And it's family-driven, and I'm the third generation in the cinemas now.
Good morning, Kamal Gyanchandani from PVR Group. I see OTT representation missing, which would have made the conversation a lot more interesting. Perhaps some other panel.
I'm John Schreiner, Senior Vice President of Theater Development for IMAX. I cover markets as diverse as Russia to the Philippines, to India and the Middle East, and work with all sorts of exhibitors and distributors in that network around the region.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Amit Sharma from Miraj Cinemas.
Okay, thanks. So just, let's kickstart this conversation with generally, what's been the scenario now. So you have seen mobile launching. It's been almost 2.5 years. People are consuming content on the go. So I think my first question would go to Kamal. PVR is the market leader today in the cinema exhibition space, undoubtedly. So, just have you seen any kind of impact whatsoever in terms of footfall? Have you analyzed the data of the youth coming to cinemas in the last 2.5 years? Has it increased? Has it gone down? Have you kind of made more investments in terms of 3D, virtual reality, the next gen kind of technologies to actually push people to the cinemas so that movie going actually becomes an experience rather than just watching to the mobile phone? Just some initial remarks from your end, please.
I think it's interesting you say that because you're a financial consultant and you follow the numbers quite closely. The fact is that while mobile is growing tremendously and that's really amplifying the consumption of content, and of course we've got Netflix, Amazon, Z5, and so many other OTT streaming platforms, which are in a tremendous investment, aggressive investment mode. As a result, there is enormous amount of content which is out there, and in this backdrop, uh, the fact is that PVR as a chain, and I can also speak for other colleagues which are listed companies, has done best ever numbers in our lifetime history in the last financial year 19. We finished with the highest admissions, highest occupancy rate, highest average ticket price, and all of this is growing. So looking at a very high bar which got set in the last year, and of course a lot of credit really goes to the kind of content that came out. Uh, uh, with that high bar, this financial year, the current financial year, is also moving in a very, very aggressive fashion, both in terms of admission and the average ticket price. Uh, and I think in addition to content, I think there is a lot of uh, capital, resources, effort, time which is being spent by PVR and our other colleagues in the business to spruce up our cinemas, to invest in the cinema infrastructure, to expand our F&B offerings. Uh, as Karan spoke about, traditionally, I mean, for a long time, we've been a traditional business. We've sold our tickets at the box office. But for the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a lot of growth on the digital platforms, which is good from a revenue stream perspective, but it's also good from data collection perspective. We are generating a lot of very rich transaction history on our customers, and all of that is something which we are spending time on to make more, to develop a better understanding of business, to be able to, communicate with our customers in a much more targeted fashion. But I must admit, these are early days. We've got to spend a lot of time to understand analytics data a lot better. But these are some of the activities that we're spending currently our time on. I would let the other panelists speak about.
So
what
I
they're
actually
doing.
had a question for John actually. So since you gave an India perspective from PVR, which is India based, I wanted a global perspective from John as to how things are panning out there. Because if you see in terms of more broadband penetration, mobile penetration, they've been far ahead of us. The emerging economies and the other developed nations. So what kind of has there been an impact of OTT in those countries? How is the consumer behavior there?
Well, I think if you look at a country like the United States, which obviously is where Netflix really started taking hold, um, the cinema business has really developed quite nicely. Like last year, echoing what Kamal was saying, they had one of their best years ever. The cinemas are reinvesting and making great experiences, more comfortable. They're reseating. They're doing a lot of things to drive consumers out of the home and into cinemas. Um, as one way to kind of combat the streaming or the desire to watch content on the telephone or on your tablets or what have you. Recently the NATO, the North American Theater Operators Organization, or I think that's what NATO stands for in the cinema world. They did a study with Ernst & Young, which looked at streaming and the impact. And what they discovered through this study is that the people who like to stream content, the people who watch a lot of movies online and what have you, are the same people who like to go to movie theaters. So if you're an avid moviegoer, you go 9 times a year or something like that, you're going to be the avid streamer as well. So it's very broad based. So it's almost like in North America, it's kind of like coexisting, or at least that's the trend.
Have there been any kind of, first day, first showcase kind of movies on any OTT platforms or something of that sort? Have they been a success or a failure?
As far as I'm aware, there was never any major production which released streaming and online, streaming and in the theaters as well. Now, from an IMAX perspective, we've kind of tested a few things where we did a thing very recently with Netflix where we premiered in IMAX theaters a 15-minute music video with a gentleman named Tom York, and it was called Anima. It was back in June, and again, it was only like a test to see how the technology would work and how people would react, and also a bit of a marketing ploy for the content itself, to say it had an exclusive release, an early release one day on IMAX. But that's, again, it's testing sort of the IMAX network. It's not a regular feature film, because that's something that I think we pride ourselves on, providing great movie-going experiences. So the big blockbusters, the studios, the filmmakers, they all want to see their movies on the big screen.
So basically, this goes to show that there's not much of an impact, at least in the developed economies. Let's steer this conversation to Amit. I think my next question would be to him. Amit, can you comment something on the non-metro cities, how the consumers are behaving? Has there been any impact of footfall? So I was reading some report of Hotstar apparently a year back, which was released, and they actually told me that maximum amount of data consumption, maximum amount of viewership of Hotstar was coming from the tier 2 and tier 3 markets. So what is the audience behavior there? Again, over there, are people okay to going to cinemas as an outing, or people like want to watch movie, on digital platforms?
Hi. See, the first point remains here is, have we provided cinemas to these cities? Do we really have cinemas in these cities? So when it comes to consumption pattern for videos, India has always been very rich in terms of consuming videos. We are talking OTT today in a great scale, but we should not forget that India already had thousands of TV channels 24/7, working Saas Bahu Ka serial to reality shows to news to sports, everything. The only thing is that TV has gone to your phone now. When you look at today, it's a smart age people which is residing all part of the country, and they are looking for a meaningful entertainment, and which is provided by cinema. So there is a different consumption pattern in different part of country. We have always consumed the homegrown videos. What OTT is doing right now, the way I look at it probably is, apart from the homegrown regional Hindi content, they are providing you the global content. So they are basically making you a global citizen, and you are now living the global stories as well. So Narcos doing fantastic consumption story out here in India is one of the example of that. So definitely consumption has grown up, and it is, the way I look at it, probably it is only 10% now. It has to grow 10x from here. As far as concerned to the mindset of the smaller city audience, they all are looking for an experience which a cinema provides. And that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to take cinemas to the smaller cities and non-metro cities without compromising the experience of cinema. And you'll be surprised to know, I was just sharing the data with Kamal before we started. In metro cities, probably we struggle to get a 35% kind of occupancy in some of the best places. But in some of the, the smaller cities, non-metro cities, the occupancy percentages are as high as 45, 46% as well. And this, I'm talking North India, I'm not talking South India, where the number are much bigger. So I think that's the answer, that, the non-metro cities, you have to provide good cinemas, and definitely people are willing to come and spend money on.
So I think the next topic of discussion, what we can stress upon, is that do we see a scenario where you will actually see cinemas competing with OTT, if at all that happens in the next 2 to 3 years? And can that have an impact on the cinema ATP, the F&B promotions? Can cinema actually give these kind of offers for making people come to the cinema to watch movies? Kushal, I would just like to know your comments on the same.
Well, uh, when we look at today's condition of the situation, bringing back the people or making people to watch the movie, the habit, we should bring back the habit of watching the movie. Um, so in this way, I think we have to plan some strategies in our pricing and the services what we provide for them. And along with it, good content is also required for these people. Services, yes, I talk about single screens. Single screens lack a lot of, with the good services to our customers. So even we have to invest a lot on the new technology and or more comforts and a good menu, food menus to them, and we should provide good food, menus to them. So if we try to give a proper or a good services to our customers, then sure people will do come back to our cinemas. And yeah.
So, I always had this view that, if you're going to a cinema, you really need to have that luxury, that entire experience that you would not have sitting at your home watching a movie on a tablet or a smart TV. So the next topic which we'd like to have a discussion is basically the kind of investments which are made in 3D and 4D technology. I would like John to take the initiative here, in terms of giving insights. Which are the key countries here who made more of 4D, 3D investments, and who are the guys who started this first, who have the first move advantage? And what exactly goes into these kind of investments? How much is required and how the dynamics work?
So it's interesting because I think a lot of 3D, the 3D wave and on a global basis is kind of waning a little bit. People are more focused on, again, big screen experiences, great 2D experiences, VIP, nice, comfortable seating and what have you. I think the investments that I'm seeing in other markets around the world is less so on 3D. Like some markets, for example, like Indonesia, the consumers just don't want to do 3D, whereas in places like China and Russia, it's still very, movie and its performance is still very 3D driven. And when we do 3D releases here in India, our box offices are really quite dramatic. But I don't necessarily think people are using too much technology to kind of combat, too much 3D technology to combat sort of the OTT. I think what people are doing around the world is investing in better experiences within the movie theater as a whole. More comfort to make it a more premium experience when you leave the home, and a great movie, environment. So, just thinking of some of the best movie theaters I've been to around the world, they all happen to be here in India, because INOX and PVR do an amazing job. And the people like SPI in the South have really kind of created some amazing palaces to drive people into movie theaters. There's places in Thailand as well, which are really fantastic. And again, they spend more in creating their multiplexes, but at the end of the day, they have like stronger staying power. One sort of comment I wanted to make a little bit on Amit's comment about providing cinemas in smaller markets and streaming and what have you, and how streaming in smaller territories is higher. One of the interesting sort of international sort of elements to this is Saudi Arabia, which is a market that I cover for IMAX. And Saudi Arabia didn't have movie theaters for 35 years, and last, I guess 2 years ago, opened the doors to opening up the first movie theaters. And prior to that time, Saudi Arabia had the highest per capita usage of YouTube for streaming, various YouTube content, and a lot of it was homegrown in the world. So, people were digesting content any way they could get it. And there's since been movie theaters open. We've got 2 IMAXs operating there right now, commercial IMAX theaters. We've got one in Jeddah and one in Riyadh. And the Jeddah IMAX theater is the second most popular IMAX theater in the world because there's the demand for people to go out to socialize, to go and experience movies together as a family, which they never had before. And I think that's one of the driving things for the movie business, not only in India as they brace with the new environment of streaming and OTT, but just as a whole, is that moviegoing is such a communal experience. It's something that you for certain movies, for certain films, you want to go with your friends. There's a recent Hollywood movie, which came out called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was a Quentin Tarantino movie, and it wasn't a big film. It wasn't a grand film, but it was a movie that I had to go see in a movie theater, and I had to go see with my wife because it's something that I wanted to experience and I wanted to talk about it with her. And I think that's a lot of what drives the cinema business, is that if we keep getting compelling content in the movie theaters, it'll continue to drive our business as a whole. I don't know if I've technically answered your question or if I've taken this off on a tangent, but
Just one more data point, which I was actually going through, very interesting data point, that 10 years back, 85% of a particular film revenue came from the theaters. Now that has come down to about 57 odd percent roughly, and digital and satellite have been big contributors in terms of eating up that market share. So the next question here is that if at all we were to release movies directly on digital, I mean, it's open to any of the exhibitors on the panelist, does it make any economic sense for a producer to go directly on digital? I mean, will they be able to make that kind of money without going in the theaters?
So I think cinema, I mean, you're right. Currently it's about 57.5, 58%, which, and when you include the overseas theatrical, it probably goes up to about 75%. It's a very sizable number, and from producers' point of view, the highest yield per eyeball, number of people who watch it in theaters and what they end up paying and what travels back to the producer, is the highest in theatrical, vis-a-vis television, vis-a-vis OTT, or any other distribution platform for that matter of fact. And the reason for that is that on OTT and broadcasting platforms, you have a lot of people watching it, but the per patron, per person, or per audience fee that one is paying, whether it's by way of subscription or pay-per-view, is fairly small as a number. So, I mean, it's possible, anything is possible. OTT players like Netflix have been investing in original content, including movies. And some of the big films, Will Smith's Bright, was it? Right. Will Smith's Bright went straight to Netflix. Amazon has a studio, and fortunately they've been following the theatrical platform. But Netflix has been regularly producing films which go straight to Netflix as a platform. They've done that also in India. But I mean, like John or maybe you mentioned that cinemas have dealt with these multiple distribution platforms for ages. I mean, before OTT, it was pay television. Before that, it was VCDs, DVDs. I mean, DVDs never really came into India properly, but we had a lot of VCDs. And of course, throughout, we've had to deal with piracy. And because of what And I thought John really summed it up well in terms of, how people are being pulled back to the cinema going experience. And one big reason is, of course, compelling content. But the other big reason is the premiumization of the whole experience, whether it's the recliners or the way the softer elements in a cinema make you feel, the kind of training we impart, the more educated, more informed, more trained people that we have in cinemas, the better is the throughput or output in terms of service standards. And all of that is becoming a compelling reason for people to come out. So while OTT can definitely, pay and acquire films for their own platform, and in some cases, producers would find it relevant and attractive enough. But in long run, I think there is a positive cycle at play uh, with OTT coming into picture from producers' perspective. Because one way or the other, whether OTT releases directly from a producer or they, follow the traditional window, theatrical window, and then release it after a gap. In both cases, producers now have another distribution platform, another way to slice and dice their content and make more money off it, which hopefully will go back in doing bigger and better films, which is great for cinemas because ultimately cinemas want good quality, really big scale, larger than life films so that the experience that you get in cinemas is, something which you can't replicate. So that's the way we look at it.
Just coming to that point of windowing which you made, very important point. I think the windowing is now come to 6 to 8 weeks before the movie goes on to digital. So actually, a big blockbuster movie usually runs for not more than 2.5 to 3 weeks. So there's not much of an impact. But you do have these one-off movies like a Uri or a Kabir Singh, which really pick up on the third, fourth week because of good word of mouth, and they actually end up going to 5 to 6 weeks. So are you going to have any talks with the industry in terms of increasing the windowing limit or something of that sort? Or are you okay with the 6 to 8 week windowing which is there right now?
So the window currently for the subscription platform is 8 weeks, and for pay-per-view platforms like DTH or DVD or anything which is pay-per-view in nature, the window is 6 weeks. Blockbuster films do much longer than 2 weeks. I mean, our experience has been that 4 weeks, 5 weeks is fairly comfortable. Uh, I think what you meant was that in the first 2 weeks is when they end up collecting a lot of revenue. But from exhibition perspective, we are also interested in the long tail, and the longer they play, the better it is for us. So the window is the minimum sort of gap between theatrical and release on any other platform. If a film is sort of moving to 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, and that happens quite regularly, Bahubali, uh, you spoke about Uri, and there have been many such examples where films have, Section 15 was another case in point. Producers are quite judicious, and we are comfortable with the current windows. I don't think there is a need to have a conversation to sort of, we would like them longer, but I don't think our business is impacted, uh, you know, any which way if you change the window to a longer window. So we are quite comfortable with this.
Great. So I think the next topic you can have is Amit can address this issue basically. The numbers clearly, data clearly suggests that, the smaller medium budget movies in the last 18 months have had a massive increase in terms of share. They've got a big amount of success. So I was of this opinion that, if you want to go to watch a movie in cinema, either it has to be a very blockbuster movie or it has to be a large-scale cinematic kind of movie like an Avengers Endgame, which you can't basically watch at home. Now, this data clearly shows that, small, medium budget movies are gaining traction. Kabir Singh, Uri, they've been massively big surprises. Just playing a devil's advocate here, if tomorrow Jio was to take these 5 or 7 of these small, medium budget movies, which can actually eventually turn blockbusters in terms of collections, can that have an impact on cinemas?
So that basically the content side of the people needs to decide. I mean, what Kamal has said, I'm taking the extension, and that will probably answer the whole thing. If Kabir Singh or Uri needs to go to a digital platform directly, so what's the upside for the producer? You go on sell that to the entire content worth 30 crore, 40 crore, 50 crore. then how they will see the 250 crore, 275 crore only coming from the cinema exhibition? We are talking only India. But at the same time, probably we need to also understand how American films have gone and conquered the world. They have told their story to the world. Today, you get one particular film getting released in China and your ROI changes. Same way, why don't we look at East Europe? Why don't we look at Latin America? Why don't we look at as a whole globe? And today probably OTT is a boon for the content maker, because just not giving you an incentive to make films, but at the same time probably you are in a better position to take your story to the globe. Why don't the content maker and the production side of the people look at to conquer the other part of the world where the cinema exhibition, it's like mushrooming. I mean, look at Latin America today. You go to Brazil, you go to Argentina, you go to Russia, and you go and tell your stories. When these are the kind of stories which is working out in a particular market, then probably you can go and exhibit those films. And what Kamal has put across, that when you go and put a film in cinema, then you probably make more money. The incentives are more. So I think we need to use both together. As far as concerned to Geo, I mean, we are clueless right now. I mean, how it's going to happen? How it's going to work? Is this going to be a Netflix or Amazon market? The way these guys have gone and done, they have acquired the film and directly, released in OTT. So, I mean, definitely there is an possibility doing that, and probably it's an opportunity loss for us, and that's what we can put across as of now. But yes, because when you have more number of OTT players coming in, Jio, Netflix, Amazon, Hotstar, all of them, if they are actually funding you 40 to 50% of your COP today, so definitely it means more number of content coming in, and more number of content means definitely, I mean, whatever the kind of video you consume, you will end up watching it at the best medium, which is cinema theaters.
I think a very valid point you made here,
I'll just add something to this. Your question really was, and I think Amit gave a good answer, but I'll just paraphrase and add something to what Amit said. So Jio or any other platform, Jio, by the way, is an incredible company, and I think what they've created in the last 2.5 years is, I mean, something which I think everyone should be really proud of. But that said, in context of your question, if an OTT platform was to take away 2, 3, 5 these breakout films, of course, there would be a short-term impact. If we lose Uri or Kabir Singh was not a small film. I mean, it was always expected to be a big one. But you're right, Badaiyo Badai or Uri or Stree, one of these films, but our, sort of sense is that India would follow what's happened in US, which is more content will get created, but not necessarily at the cost of content which is releasing in cinemas. So studios and producers will spruce up their production to meet up this new demand which is coming from OTT platforms, and they would produce originals for them, but that would not be at the cost of films that they were producing for the regular template of releasing it in theaters and so on and so forth. And secondly, for every 4 or 5 breakout films, you have 50 films which don't do well. Small films which, because of small vision or small P&A or, lack of good quality content, they remain small. So when you buy an original, how do you know which one is a breakout? That's the big challenge, and that's where cinema is a model, which is, which is a very fair model. You release a film and then you let the film discover its audience, is a better way to discover the price of content rather than just paying an upfront fee and then trying to sort of guess that this would be a breakout film. So I just thought I'll add this point too.
So yeah, I mean, quite agreed with, well taken his point, because if you see today the star power, it's come because of the big screen. I think none of the stars have been created from TV. They've all emerged from the big screen. And I think that big screen will be a very important part of the entire ecosystem. But again, because Geo Studios is itself a production house today, if at all they end up making Luka Chupi or some 4-5 films in a year, probably they might give it to Geo platform to showcase on a first day first show. That might have a mild negative impact for the exhibitors in the near term. But I think the medium to long term, the larger studios like Foxstar, Viacom, I do not think that they'll probably go and tie up with the Geo and release the big large cinematic films over there. So just a quick run through I would want, from everyone in the panel. Basically, the question is basically will both screens coexist, and yes or a no, and just one small reason if you can just articulate to the reason for that. So I'll start with Kushal regarding this.
It's my opinion. Yes, surely the OTT and the cinema both will coexist because we have to look back to our Western, where Netflix is going down and there is more content being done in the Hollywood. So if we take this as an example, yes, sure, both will coexist.
No, absolutely, they'll coexist. Cinemas have coexisted with many other distribution platforms in past. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not either or situation. It's and situation. They will coexist without a problem for all the reasons that we've discussed on this panel. Over to John.
Yeah, I hope they coexist. Otherwise, we shouldn't be up here. But exactly. I think at the end of the day, a couple things that we all need to kind of bear in mind. One, obviously, I talked a little bit about the fact that cinema is a very shared experience. The other thing that we need to bear in mind is that the fact that the people making the movies, the talent, the directors, they want to be up on a big screen. They're making movies. They've dreamed about making movies on a big screen. They're not dreaming about making movies and having people watch them on telephones or tablets. So there's always going to be the driving force. And I think one of the driving force about cinema is that if we collectively as an industry do it right and continue to make really good experiences, is that cinema will be used as a way to kind of market the biggest and the best content. So it'll continue to be a leader or driving force. At least that's my hope.
I mean, certainly both will coexist. It will just not coexist, but at the same time, both will grow from here, the way I look at it. But surely cinema is going to become more experience-driven, and what you provide from services to technologies, that will all count. And definitely both has immense opportunity of growth. We can debate about the percentage of growth for both the platform, but yes, both have immense opportunity of growing together from here.
So just to summarize, on our topic today, both the large screen and the OTT will both coexist in a very big way. Both will have their own growth drivers, both will have their own audience, both will have their own differentiating factors. I think the production houses, the content houses, you need to go back and make more of large-scale cinematic movies in case cinema were to grow. And I think we're already seeing, stuff on the verge of that. We are seeing a lot of big screen movies, a lot of biopic-based movies which are being produced right now. So I think net, I think both of these should actually coexist and do well for each other. Thank you, everyone.
I request our speakers to please remain on stage with us. I'm sorry, sir, to bring you back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is said that nothing can replace pearls of wisdom and sharing of experiences by seasoned experts in the field. That is exactly what we witness right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to request you all to please give our dignitaries, our speakers on stage, a huge round of applause. Thank you for such an interesting session. And I also request our moderator for this session, Mr. Taurani, to kindly present a thank you memento from the Big Cine Expo and special gifts that we have from Harman to our speakers on stage. To Mr. Amit Praveen Sharma. Mr. John Schreiner. Mr. Kamal Gyanchandani. And Mr. Kushal LC. Can I please invite Mrs. Vasudha Raghav to kindly come on stage to present a memento and a gift to our moderator for this session, Mr. Taurani. Thank you for moderating the entire session so well. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please hear a huge round of applause for all of them? And may I please request you all to please come forward for a group photo opportunity. Thank you once again, gentlemen. Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your words of wisdom with all of us here today.